3 million years ago, the Earth, in the dawn of the Pliocene epoch, was a canvas painted with primordial life. It was a world of breathtaking, untamed beauty, a tapestry of endless, humid forests giving way to vast, sun-drenched grasslands, a vibrant biome where the laws of nature were written in tooth and claw. The air itself felt thick with the scent of damp earth, blooming flora, and the distant metallic tang of an ancient, unknown river. The creatures that inhabited this realm were magnificent and strange, giants known to modern humans only as whispers preserved in stone, fossils that hinted at a grandeur now lost. In this powerful, perilous cradle of life, a small, fragile lineage struggled for existence, the Homo Ergos. They were not the largest, nor the fastest, nor were their hands naturally weaponized with massive claws. Their power lay in a nascent, burning spark of intellect, a capacity for thought, planning, and cooperation that set them apart from every other beast. They were intelligent, capable of crafting simple yet effective tools from stone and wood, yet profoundly vulnerable to the myriad dangers lurking in every shadow. They were brave, driven by the fundamental, relentless need to survive, yet their existence was a perpetual state of vigilance, constantly surrounded by predators and the unpredictable forces of nature. The Homo Ergos tribe, a tight-knit cluster of about 30 individuals, had established a temporary camp near a cluster of jagged, protective rock formations. It was a place chosen for its vantage point and defensible terrain, a meager fortress against the brutal reality of their world. This morning, as on countless mornings before, the crucial life-sustaining ritual of the hunt began. The sun was still a deep orange promise on the horizon, slowly pulling itself above the distant hazy line of the savannas. A select group of 5 hunters moved out, led by Kael, the tribal leader. Kael was lean and scarred, his movements economical and silent, honed by decades of survival. He carried a heavy, meticulously flaked stone axe, a tool that was both a weapon and a symbol of his authority. With him were Lyra, a sharp-eyed young woman whose skill with a throwing spear was unmatched, Ron, a thick-set man known for his incredible endurance and brute strength, and 2 younger hunters, Tari and Jorah, who were still learning the unforgiving lessons of the world. The dew, heavy and cold, sparkled like scattered jewels across the tops of the tall, golden hyperrhenia grass, soaking the lower portions of their skin cloaks as they moved. The morning was silent, save for the rhythmic crunch of their bare feet on the dry soil and the faint, high-pitched buzz of unseen insects. They moved in a loose, practiced formation, eyes constantly scanning the shifting landscape, reading the subtle signs, a broken blade of grass, a faint scent on the cooling air, the sudden silence of the local bird population. They were seeking a medium-sized herbivore, perhaps a swift-footed antelope ancestor or a grazing pelorovis, anything that could provide the protein and fat necessary to sustain the tribe for another few days. They had been moving for nearly an hour, following a dried riverbed that promised a path to richer grazing lands. The tension of the hunt was a dull, constant ache in their shoulders and necks, a mental burden they had carried since birth. Suddenly, a sound unlike any they had ever heard cut through the fragile stillness. It was a deep, resonant thrumming, a vibration felt more through the soles of their feet than heard with their ears. It was followed by a high-pitched, furious screech, a sound that spoke of pure, unbridled aggression. Kael instantly raised his hand, a universal signal to halt. The 5 hunters froze instantly, melding into the background of the tall grass. Their primitive fight-or-flight instincts screamed at them to flee, but Kael's intellect demanded caution. They had to know the source of the danger. Survival depended on knowledge. Kael slowly lowered himself, parting the tall stalks of grass with his fingers, motioning for Lyra to look with him. And then they saw it. Towering over the savanna, its massive head barely visible above the 8-foot-high grass, stood a creature of mythic proportions. This was no ordinary slender-necked bird. This was the Titanus Giant Ostrich. It was easily twice the height and mass of a modern ostrich, its legs like powerful, feathered columns, and its body covered in a shaggy, protective coat of dark, iridescent plumage. Its head was small, its beak sharp and dangerous, but it was the sheer scale of the creature that was terrifying. It was a blur of aggressive movement, its thick, 2-toed feet tearing chunks of turf from the earth as it moved. It was a predator, a defensive giant capable of outrunning any terrestrial foe, and its thunderous kicks could shatter bone with horrifying ease. The sight alone was enough to make Tari and Jorah grip their spears so tightly their knuckles were white. "It is hunting," Lyra whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Or perhaps, being hunted." As if in answer to her fear, an even greater danger emerged from the dense, thorny thicket 20 yards to the bird's left. It was a beast built like a living siege engine, a colossal ancestor of the modern rhinoceros, a heavily muscled brute. Its skin was thick, folded, and tough, the color of dried mud and ancient bark, an armor impervious to all but the sharpest, most powerful attacks. This prehistoric titan was low to the ground, its neck thick, and a truly frightening weapon projected from its snout. A massive, shovel-like horn, serrated and sharpened by millennia of natural selection. It moved with a slow, grinding power, its steps heavy and deliberate, each footfall shaking the ground in a perceptible rhythmic tremor. It was aggression incarnate, powerful, relentless, and possessing the terrifying momentum of a falling mountain. The two giants locked eyes over the field of dew-soaked grass. The bird's high-pitched fury met the rhino's low, guttural snort, a sound of supreme territorial dominance. The air, already charged with the tension of the hunt, now felt electric, heavy with the weight of an impending, cataclysmic struggle. And then, the charge. It began with the rhino ancestor, which lowered its massive head, its weaponized horn pointing forward like a battering ram. It initiated a grinding, irresistible run, the ground beneath its weight trembling violently. Simultaneously, the Titanus Ostrich erupted into motion, a shocking burst of speed for a creature its size, kicking up a rooster tail of soil and grass. They collided with the deafening, splintering sound of wood against stone. Dust, grass, and clods of earth exploded into the air, momentarily obscuring the battle. The rhino's charge was met by a barrage of devastating kicks from the bird's powerful legs. One thunderous impact connected with the rhino's shoulder, a blow that would have instantly killed a smaller creature. The rhino roared, a sound of pain and outrage, and swung its massive head, the serrated horn ripping a deep gouge into the bird's flank. The hunters, clinging to the cover of a cluster of lichen-covered basalt rocks, watched in stunned, terrified silence. Their own problems, the need for food, the gnawing hunger, were momentarily eclipsed by the sheer, terrifying power of the spectacle. Tari, the youngest, instinctively ducked behind Ron's broad back, his breathing ragged. Kael's eyes, however, were not fixed on the spectacle of the fighting giants. They were scanning the surrounding landscape, calculating the risk. The battle was a vortex of destruction, a localized, chaotic hurricane. The creatures were moving toward the west, smashing down the very thickets and bushes the hunters had planned to use for cover. The battle was destroying their environment, and worse, the sound and fury would attract other, opportunistic predators, saber-toothed cats, scavenging hyenas, or perhaps even a rival Homo Ergos group. The tribal leader whispered, his voice low and urgent, overriding the panic in the younger men. "We must leave now. Now. Before they destroy everything, or before the scent of blood brings the great cats." Another loud, earth-shaking crash echoed across the valley as the two beasts locked horns and legs again, their momentum momentarily halted in a brutal pushing contest. The air around them vibrated with the raw, untamed force of their collision. Their battle was fierce, a violent primal dance of death, and unstoppable by anything other than their own mutual exhaustion or fatal injury. This was the moment of decision, the critical juncture between paralysis and survival. Kael did not wait for consensus. He moved, signaling with a sharp hand gesture toward the east, the direction opposite the mayhem. The hunters sprang into action, their fear momentarily channeled into desperate, life-saving speed. They sprinted in the opposite direction, their bare feet pounding on the earth, the heavy thrumming of the battle echoing behind them. They moved through patches of dense, thorny bushes, tearing their skin, over jagged, sun-warmed rocks, and across shallow, drying mud flats. They ran for their lives, fueled by the primal engine of self-preservation. The image of the colliding beasts burned into their minds. Lyra, despite her terror, kept a watchful eye behind them, ensuring the slower Tari and Jorah kept pace. Ron's massive frame cleared a path, his powerful arms brushing aside obstructions. Kael, always leading, drove them upward, toward a familiar higher ridge that promised a clear escape route and a commanding view. Finally, lungs burning and legs aching, They reached a safe hilltop covered in sparse, defensive shrubs. They collapsed onto the dry, coarse earth, breathing heavily, their chests heaving, the sweat on their bodies chilling quickly in the breeze. But they were alive. The roaring and crashing of the giants' battle was now a distant, muffled sound in the valley below. Kael, resting his heavy stone axe on the ground, took a long, slow draught of air, allowing his heart to settle its furious rhythm. He looked out over the horizon, watching the dust cloud that marked the distant, continuing struggle. He looked at the faces of his hunters, faces that were etched with exhaustion, fear, and a new, profound respect for the arbitrary violence of their world. He saw the awe in their eyes. He didn't speak of the lost hunt, or the wasted morning, or the immediate need for food. Instead, the leader spoke a truth that had been forged in the fires of countless similar escapes, a lesson passed down from their earliest ancestors. "Look at them," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of ancient wisdom, nodding toward the dust cloud. "They are the strongest, the largest. They have the power to tear the world apart. Yet, they will both bleed, perhaps both die, in their blind fury." He paused, letting the silence emphasize his final profound statement, a lesson that would one day define his species. In this world, survival belongs not to the strongest, but to the wisest. The strongest fight their world. The wisest know when to run. We did not win by strength today. We won by cunning. This choice, the decision to flee from power rather than confront it, was more than just a momentary tactic. It was perhaps one of the first great philosophical lessons that shaped the future of humankind. It was the moment the Homo Ergos understood that their true weapon was not the stone in their hand, but the intelligence in their mind, the ability to assess risk, cooperate, and choose the path of least resistance. They were not destined to dominate the giants of the Pliocene with muscle, but to outlive them with strategy. It was a small group of early humans, on a small, safe hilltop, who learned the first rule of intelligence, that sometimes the greatest act of power is knowing when not to use it at all. The future of their line lay not in the confrontation of titans, but in the quiet, persistent wisdom of the retreat.